And my understanding is we are ready to go. I just sent out a link on our chat where you can also see it on KHON2.com and of course here on the 20th Annual Native Hawaiian Convention link with the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. I understand we are live and ready to go. My name is Gina Mangieri. I'm honored to be the moderator here for this particular panel. Couldn't be more timely. This panel will examine the Red Hill crisis that is threatening the aquifer that supplies water to half of Oahu's population. Our esteemed panel includes Congressman Kaialiʻi Kahele. Also, Kamanamaikalani Beamer, professor and former state water commissioner. Ernie Lau, chief engineer of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. And Wayne Chung Tanaka, director of the Sierra Club of Hawaii. I will also make note that both the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement and KHON2 News made extensive efforts to try to include a Navy participant live on this panel. They declined multiple opportunities to do so. We then extended them the invitation to at least supply some answers in writing, which they have done to me this afternoon. I have them here, and when relevant and applicable, I will try to represent the Navy's side of the issue as I can find their relevant responses in their written response. But without further ado, let's start with, at this time, what is known about what has caused this contamination? Ernie.
Thank you, Gina. You know, as far as we know, we're not completely privy to all the information from the Navy or the Department of Health. But the Navy has indicated it was originated with their Red Hill shaft, their drinking water source, which is located just about half a mile downhill from the fuel tanks. So that's what we've been told by the Navy.
Thank you. Now, of course, we did ask the same to the Navy, and they are not being specific, only saying they've conducted a thorough investigation that will take some time. They say, however, they're committed to sharing the information once it is available. Next, of course, we wanted to know what areas are impacted by the current contamination. To get a true scope of this, the Navy tells me that as of today, approximately 1,500 complaints have been received as of this morning, primarily from 10 different housing communities. Now, I'm going to try a screen share here. Just moments ago, I received this map from the Navy. I'm going to attempt a screen share. Want to show you folks what they have shown us. At least this is some very hot off the press information here. You can see the areas in red, of course, highly recognizable, the Aliamanu Military Reservation. You can see the Red Hill up in the upper right, and then the other red square down to the lower left, and the red rectangle. Those are where the other 9 housing communities sit. So you can see a little bit of that continuity there between them. Again, this is what the Navy just sent, and it does not have the housing locations labeled other than we can clearly see Aliamanu, but at least this gives us a sense of the continuity of the affected areas. All right. So, that's the Navy's side of the story in terms of the scope, the number 1,500 and the map. But, Representative Kahele, you've heard from constituents, in many places. Tell us what you've heard from the scope of who's affected by this.
Well, first of all, Gina, thank you so much for moderating this. And I want to mahalo Kuhio Lewis, Executive Director of the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, and the entire team at CNHA for putting together this opportunity through their annual convention to address, one of the most important and critical crises happening in our community today. And it's great to see Kamana and Wayne and Ernie Lau and their expertise that they bring to this panel that I hope over the next 2 hours we can really answer a lot of the questions that the people of Hawaii have. As far as this and what has been happening since at least the 20th of November, which is when I first was notified of an incident in Red Hill, we've been working really hard to stay ahead of what's been happening. That has been challenging because of the lack of information at different times. But we've been working real hard as a congressional delegation to stay on top of this and hold the Navy's feet to the fire as this situation has unfolded. As a delegation, our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts go out to the thousands of Navy families and the communities that surround this area and everything that they've endured, the last 2 weeks. And there's a lot of questions that still remain unanswered, but make no mistake, the health, the safety, the quality and the purity of our drinking water is the most paramount thing and the most important thing for myself and Hawaii's delegation. And so we're working real hard to make sure that that happens. And I think, as this has transpired over the last few days, the governor and the Department of Health has taken extraordinary measures that has never been done before to address this unfolding situation at Red Hill.
Thank you, Representative. Now, Wayne, can you add to that? You're hearing from people who are not on the formal official affected list, right? I mean, this could be far beyond the scope of those red rectangles we just looked at on that Navy map, right?
Yes, we have been hearing from folks. People are posting messages, images on social media. They've also been messaging us directly, images of fuel sheens in their water, and these are in housing areas that the Navy provided. We're trying to help get them, trying to help set up or connect them with folks that can do independent water testing to verify whether or not the petroleum really is in their fuel. It's very scary for them and frustrating in that they're not being provided the same opportunities for relief that are being provided in areas that the Navy acknowledges has been.
Yes, thank you. Well, what is being done to ensure that those areas' water is as safe as possible, Representative Kahele?
For the question. I think part of the miscommunication on behalf, of the Navy, and still there's unanswered questions in some cases of what areas are affected and what areas are not. And so, providing a comprehensive map that can clearly show where the Navy's water supply system is, where it provides that water, specifically coming from the Waiava, the Halava, and the Red Hill shafts that make up the water system that runs is run by the Navy, is really important. As far as what the Navy has done to isolate that, as is well known in the public, the Navy isolated the Red Hill shaft on the evening of Sunday, November 28th, and as of right now, there is no water from the Red Hill shaft providing water to the Navy's water system. It is being run off the Waiava and the Halava shaft. In the meanwhile, the Navy is attempting to flush the water that is still in the water system. They're working with the Department of Health on doing that. They were asked by the Department of Health to stop flushing the system because of the severe rainfall that we had over the last 2 days. And they're waiting for the green light from the Department of Health to begin recommencing the flushing of the water system. And so that's what they're doing right now to ensure that there is no petroleum contaminated water from Red Hill shaft entering the Navy's water system. Now, with that being said, that reduces the amount of water that comes out of that feeds the Navy's water system. And that has, of course, effects on how much volume is being provided to the Navy's water system. And they've advised, like you just showed on that map, Gina, residents that live in these specific communities that are on Hickam Air Force Base, on Pearl Harbor, and in the Radford Terrace, Caitlin Drive, Halsey Drive, anywhere between basically Pu'uloa Road and the Navy Marine Golf Course, and then the Alea Manu housing area, which is really run by the Army. Those housing communities have been informed and told to not consume the water that feeds those communities. And that's what you're showing right there.
Yes. Yes, to show what you were telling. And yeah, I mean, and hopefully it's just limited to that area. And that's just that big mystery that we hope it doesn't continue to come, beyond there. Now, Ernie, what are the short-term solutions to address the immediate water safety concerns, whether you're on base or off?
Gina, I really can't speak to on-base situations because that's not our water system. It's the Navy's water system, so it's their kuleana. But for off-base, in the border water supply system, our water is safe because what we've done is taken steps like shutting down Halawa Shaft. We in the Navy tap the same groundwater aquifer. It's like a cup of water with two straws. So they draw in on one side of that cup, we're drawing from the other side. When we heard Sunday night, actually we didn't hear on Sunday night. When we heard that Sunday night the Navy had shut down Red Hill Shaft, that gave us concern because we were still pumping on our side of the cup of water. And our concern was about pulling that any fuel contamination that's in the groundwater toward us. Number one, we do not want to put petroleum into our drinking water and send it out into our water system because our water system is very integrated and that water can flow at different locations depending on how demand is occurring over the water system. So really, it's really difficult to isolate and pinpoint the locations in our water system because it's so massive, so large. So we took the efforts to isolate Halawa Shaft, turn it off, and not pump from there. That's the only way we could assure that if there's any fuel in the groundwater that's moving toward us, that we wouldn't continue to draw it and pump it into our water system. We've also taken steps to look at our emergency connections that we have with the Navy's water system. And the ones closest on that eastern side of the Navy's water system that was shown on that map, we've temporarily just removed the water meter. We kept the piping in place on that connection if it's needed, but we removed the water meter to create a physical gap between the Navy's water system and our water system. We're looking at all the emergency connections that we have with the Navy and looking how we can prevent any potential for backflow into our system or back siphonage into our system. We do not want that to happen. The Navy's facing some real challenges here because petroleum contamination in the water system is kind of, I think, new to all of us. And here at BWS, we really haven't experienced something like this in our water system. How do you get fuel out of our water system? And I don't know the answer to that. I think we're in new territory here.
Yeah, that's for sure. Ernie, is the aquifer safe from contamination at this time? Has anyone tested the actual aquifer water?
Looking at some of the recent, the Navy as part of this Red Hill facility, back around mid-2000, they installed a monitoring well network, basically test wells that they can send a sample tube down or pump a little pump down there and down the well to the groundwater, to the water table, and draw out a sample that can be tested for petroleum contamination. When we saw the recent information that was recently just posted, my staff, Mr. Erwin Kawata, who's done a ton of work here since almost 8 years ago, he looked at that data, and yes, we did see evidence of fuel contamination in those test wells. We saw some of them go up after the events in like May, the May 6th leak. So there is groundwater contamination below the facility and near the facility. The question is, has it moved across, migrated across Halawa Valley? Congressman, I don't know if you've heard, we just heard from a Navy admiral that the Navy's Aiea Halawa Shaft, they've also secured that because they were concerned about potentially drawing fuel contamination in the groundwater across Halawa Valley toward their shaft location, which is actually kind of located close to Aiea, just as you enter Aiea town on the right. I think that's the location.
Ernie, did we understand you right to say that the Navy is also no longer using their Aiea Halawa Shaft?
That's the last I heard from one of their admirals, and Gina, you should confirm that with the Navy directly if they've changed that. I was a little surprised, but I could understand why they want to also be careful because right now they're maybe depending solely on their Waiʻawa shaft, and that it's hard to believe that it was only a little over a week ago that this situation, reared its ugly head. But if I'll tell you, it feels like we've been working on this for quite a while already.
Sure seems like it. Mr. Beamer, can you weigh in here on what all of this means? Okay, these test wells are showing, potential contamination. What does that mean for the aquifer? What does this mean if true that the Navy is also shutting down a second well?
Sure. I also want to mahalo all my panelists. Deeply respect your folks' efforts and work, and thank you for hosting this important discussion. So my background with this issue goes to 2014. I served for 8 years on the Hawaii State Water Resource Management Commission, and in 2013 was really this large-scale leak, about 27,000 gallons, perhaps 39,000 gallons, that was initially reported from the Navy. So this issue has been going on for very many years, and for about 8 years we questioned the Navy about safety, and they wanted to affirm that drinking water was safe and there was very minimal risks. But here we are today, so the crisis is real, and the fact that there's petroleum in the Halawa aquifer is a very, very serious issue. And as Ernie had said, there aren't examples of cleaning petroleum out of an aquifer. So we need to take immediate steps to make Halawa and Oʻahu as safe as possible. When we look at that map, those may be directly affected areas today in this moment. The reality, however, is this is a much broader and longer issue that Oʻahu will have to face. There has never been a more serious and critical threat to the life-giving waters of Oʻahu than there is at this moment.
Thank you. And Wayne, of course, this is a battle that the Sierra Club has joined in fighting for quite some time. Put that in perspective for us, this threat to the aquifer. Are these just isolated houses being affected, or are they the canary in the coal mine?
Oh, absolutely. This is not an isolated incident. Since 2014, we've seen multiple had fuel spills in Pu'uloa from connected pipelines, which raises a question as to whether the Navy's leak detection system is able to perform to the standards that they've been assuring us it can. We've had, in May that leaked about 1,600 gallons at the facility, and again, that petroleum was a relatively small amount, but still escaped into the environment and potentially into the groundwater. We have, just 2 weeks ago, another 14,000 gallon spill from from a drain line, which again raises a question as to where this fuel came from. And if the Navy doesn't know, that's a huge concern. And then we have this current situation with contamination. We still, again, do not really know the full extent of what's going on. It's been very flabbergasting to kind of see the kind of deference that the Navy's been getting over the years. But I think finally, hopefully, this current situation will be the wake-up call that we need to understand that this facility poses an existential threat to
Thank you. Ernie, the Board of Water Supply has shut down the Halawa shaft, as you mentioned, pumping more water from the other wells to make up the difference. How long are those other wells able to continue their increased production safely?
Gina, that is the question. Right now, it's been raining. I think Oʻahu almost got 8 inches of rain last night. That's pretty amazing. It's like Keakua just opened the faucet over my house and just kept it full blast, pounding my roof all night long. But that's a question. When we get into the summer, that'll be the test, because demand really fluctuates with weather. Wetter months, demand is lower, of course, because people don't have to water their grass and do other things. It's cooler. But in the summer, that'll be the test. So summer demand usually peaks much higher than the winter demand. And with our loss of 20% of our capacity to pump water to urban Honolulu, we're going to have to really monitor that closely. So the point, we want to give everybody the heads up already. We are going to need everybody's kokua, especially in the Honolulu water system, but also island-wide too, to save water, to not waste it, to be very careful how they use this precious gift from Te Akua, this vai. So we are going to be going back continuously and communicating with the community over time into the summer and beyond on how we are doing. Because those other wells, we're going to have to stress them harder by pumping them more. And what we have to watch there, we'll be watching how salty those wells become. If they start to trend toward getting too salty, we may not have a choice but to shut those wells, some of those wells down, because we don't want to compromise the quality of the aquifer at that location. So we're going to be watching chloride levels, pumping rates from these sources, and how people are using water throughout the, especially the water system. So can expect really very targeted water conservation messaging to come out to especially the Honolulu customers. And I've asked my staff to look at a more aggressive program that may include specialized rebates or other incentives for people to save water. And this is all done voluntarily. The worst case scenario is that supply is not able to keep up with demand. In that case, then we have to look at more drastic measures. And that might mean restrictions that are not voluntary, that might become mandatory, such as, there was a few periods of drought in the past over the last 30 years, drought that lasted more, 5 or 6 years. And at some point, we did actually implement mandatory restrictions on water usage. For example, it might be, you can only water your yard on odd or even days, or don't wash your car with a hose running. Use a bucket or a flow nozzle to control it so you're not wasting any water, letting it run down the driveway. So I just want to be upfront with people. We're going to do our best to have supply be able to meet the demands of our customers, their water use. But if we run into a situation where no matter how much we pump, we cannot keep up with the demand, then we're going to ask for even more stringent measures to be implemented. So we need everybody's kokua. We got to do this together. We're not going to be able to do this by ourselves.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Beamer, should residents be concerned about the water lines to their homes, whether they're in these military homes that have already had the contaminated water pass through, or for those for whom it still might be coming?
That's really a question of time. I think, Ernie has confirmed right now all of Oahu's, other than this specific Navy incidents, the water is safe. But the real issue is the Navy's underground storage tanks and their existential threat to the aquifer and the overall water system on Oahu. We're talking about 20 tanks that can hold a capacity of 250 million gallons of fuel that sit 100 feet above the Halawa aquifer. Now, if the failure of one of those tanks is severe and extreme, it will impact, as Ernie said, because Oahu's water system is mixed, it will impact all of Oahu. And this is what we have to stop immediately. And I want to commend Congressman Kahele for asking difficult questions and getting leadership more accountable to this. And we need to take swift and direct action at addressing this threat to Oahu's aquifer immediately with the Navy.
Thank you. And Mr. Kahele, Representative, we will turn back to you to ask, there's of course this short-term stuff that has to happen, but what is the long-term solution to ensure that all of Oahu's water is safe, including for our military ohana?
Thanks, Gina. I probably should have said earlier, I'm sure with Ernie and myself who are, actively involved in conversations with multiple entities that, we're only providing you the information that we've been told to provide you the most accurate real-time information that's being provided to us. But things change, and so if there's an update, we'll provide that. But what I can confirm is what Ernie said earlier, and that is that the Halawa shaft has been isolated from the Navy's water system, and it is not providing water along with the Red Hill shaft to the Navy's water system. The Navy's water system is only being fed currently by the Waiawa shaft. And for those of you that might not know where the Waiawa shaft is, it's the farthest shaft away from the system. It's in the vicinity of the, or in the area of the H2, way out there in Pearl City. It has a 42-inch pipe that provides the bulk of the water for the Navy's water system. So Ernie is correct. The Red Hill and Halawa shafts are both isolated. And, you know, therein lies a question, and maybe Kamana, who was on Seaworm for 8 years, can answer this question, or even Wayne. But you know, there has been a disconnect, and in many cases, a disagreement between the Navy and you know, Board of Water Supply and Department of Health in the, I guess you could say, the hydrology of our aquifer systems, and whether or not those aquifers have underground, you know, tunnels and mix and flow under our island rather than being isolated in chambers. And you know, the concern, like Ernie said, was if fuel had contaminated the Red Hill shaft, that eventually that water could make its way to the Halawa shaft, which is why I think he did the right thing by and took a very conservative, very precautionary approach by cutting off the Halawa shaft. But you also need to remember that if there is, well, we know there is petroleum in the Red Hill shaft. Everybody admits that. We need to get that water out of the Red Hill shaft that has the petroleum contaminants in it. So at some point, that water needs to also be flowing out of the Red Hill shaft. We don't want it to remain stagnant in the Red Hill shaft and have it, you know, contaminate other aquifers. So it's more of a hydrology question, but that's also something to for maybe Ernie and Kamana to talk about, the dispute between whether or not they're connected or separated by chambers, I guess you could say.
Now, is the Navy, this is truly breaking news. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Ernie, for confirming that with the Navy. They have not done many things proactively in any of this. So for them to be shutting down this second well, does that mean they found contamination there? Go ahead, Ernie, or either one, if anyone knows.
If you're asking me the question, Gina,
Yes.
you know, and I, you know, I can't say enough for Ernie Lau, and you know, I would argue that he's, you know, probably the most credible, knowledgeable resource and the most trusted resource right now in the state of Hawaii on the Oʻahu aquifer. And what Ernie did a few days ago to isolate the Halawa shaft is the Navy's following that lead and erring on the side of precaution. And I don't know when they shut off the Halawa shaft. I can confirm it is shut off, but I think they're doing exactly what Ernie suspected should have been done and that he did a few days ago.
Okay. Ernie, again, just to confirm, have they given you any test, or do they take test results from that well too?
Gina, I don't know that question, but I do want to recognize, you know, Congressman Kaialiʻi. He's been in almost constant contact with me when this incident unfolded. So just a big mahalo to the Congressman for all his hard work. I really appreciate it. And, you know, so right now, Gina, now is the time for all of us to work together to make a difference, to make changes. We have alignment. I think we are approaching alignment among our key decision makers at both the state and federal level. So it is time to, I think, stand in protection of our water resources and ensure what the Navy is experiencing right now, and it's a very sad situation, that will not happen with our broader community of Honolulu and Oʻahu.
Gina,
Mr. Beamer, yes, please.
Oh, if I might add a comment on that, because Congressman Kahele kind of asked me directly. So in regards to connectivity of the aquifers, you know, we really have to take the precautionary principle approach, which is we have to make the best decisions we can, because no one knows exactly, to be honest, exactly how all these aquifers work and their connectivity. But we have to be precautionary and to protect our precious public trust resources for future generations. So we have to do everything possible to assume that this is a very catastrophic situation that we need to address immediately. And many of the community are calling for the removal of the fuel tanks and the permanent decommissioning of them, for the safety of the aquifer.
Yes. And I'll stick with you, Mr. Beamer, because if at the end of the day, the Navy cannot, will not, does not move them, what can be done to ensure that they do not leak again in their present location? Can it be done?
Sure. So again, in 2014, we were assured by the Navy that there would not be future leaks, that they would remedy and address this issue, and that the drinking water would be safe for all of Oahu. They also said they would be completely transparent with us, and here we are, and none of those things have happened. So the reality is, I personally believe, my professional experience and my work leads me to believe that Oahu's groundwater cannot be safe with 80-year-old storage tanks that were built in World War II that are continuing to store these fuel. These tanks are very different than your ordinary mom and pop gas station. Those are double walled. They have sensors between the tanks. So immediately when there's a leak, those gas stations are held accountable. The Navy is exempt from all that regulation. And they've leaked multiple times over the years. And there really is no other alternative than condemning these tanks for me if we're talking about groundwater safety. And that has economic impacts for all of Oahu. I want to be I'm not trying to be frightening or create panic. But this is a serious issue for the future of Oahu and our islands right now that affects basically our lives and our economy.
If you to set the historic scene for people who might not know, I mean, these things were commissioned by President Roosevelt. You can picture how long ago that was, right? At the time, of course, they were an engineering marvel, but look at what has changed in engineering over all of the years. These tremendous heroes who we're welcoming this week for the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, those now old men were young men, teenagers in the time when those tanks were built. It helps you show the true age of that facility. A marvel, all those years ago, not so much today compared to the modern technology. Now, I do want to acknowledge that the Navy maintains that these are important to the national security still, as they were years ago. For those of you who may be just joining us, the Navy was invited to this panel multiple times. They declined to send a participant. Nonetheless, both the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement and myself pushed for written answers from the Navy, at least to represent their side. Here's a little bit of what they have to say about the national security. And then Congressman Kahele, I'll ask you to weigh in on this after their points as well, as you have also, of course, serve in the armed forces too. So to give us the importance of why are they there in the first place, the Navy maintains that a significant percentage of petroleum war reserves are required to remain in the Indo-Pacific region. That is here. That is at Red Hill. They say the Red Hill's location near Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam enables the refueling of surface combatants outside of any of the area that is needed for them. It can also be used for day-to-day support of the base. In addition, they say that it is available for emergency use at the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport, Honolulu Harbor, HECO if needed, even first responders. I don't know if we've ever had to make use of that, but they say it's available. And they say because it is underground, gravity fed, cyber protected, they say, it makes the Red Hill, and this is a quote from the Navy, a uniquely survivable and resilient facility. Congressman Kahele, those seem to be valid points from a national security perspective. What do you say as a member of the armed forces?
I couldn't agree more, Gina. I would also say water is a national security importance as well. And, ola ika vai, right? Vai, water is wealth. And we cannot survive without fresh water. And as a member of Congress who represents Hawaii, I have no higher priority than the safety and the health of our community and the safety and health of our water resource, like Kamana said. And so that is also a very, very high priority for me. And, that has to be the most important thing, is the health and safety and the people of Hawaii. If we don't have national, national security, national asset if we don't have water. If you think about it, just surrounding this area, we have Indo-PACOM, we have the U.S. Army Pacific, the commander of the Pacific Fleet, we have Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam and the PACAF commander, all in one location surrounding this very precious water resource. If we permanently contaminate this water resource, all that goes away, and that's very, very important as well.
Of course, this is such a fast-moving issue. As of last evening, the governor ordered the suspension of the use of Red Hill. The Navy, as of just before 1 p.m. today, which would have been the time of their Department of Health hearing, asked the Department of Health for a continuance. So there was no 1 o'clock hearing today with the Department of Health on that ordered suspension. The Secretary of the Navy had mentioned in a press conference yesterday, this is prior to the governor's order, that he took it more as a suggestion, but one they were willing to entertain. Now, I did ask the Navy, are there alternative locations for bulk fuel storage that could be quickly stood up if Red Hill must be decommissioned? The Navy answered me, this is their quote, "While we cannot speculate on other location options, we can tell you that the Red Hill facility is unlike any other facility with respect to size and capacity." So is non-committal in terms of geography or a commitment to move. But Congressman Kahele, what's your feeling about alternative locations? If they've got to move that fuel now, where does it go?
Well, let's just think about that for a second, Gina. The Navy's bulk fuel storage facility underground, there is nothing else like it in the entire nation. We do not store 250 up to 1 million gallons of fuel like this underground anywhere in the country. I think Kamana touched on that. This fuel farm sits right above a federally designated sole source groundwater aquifer for the entire southern Oʻahu basal aquifer lens, from Pearl City, Moanalua, all the way out to Hawaii. And so, addressing it and having alternative areas for fuel, there is no other locations on our military bases to store additional above ground alternative fuel sites. We have above ground tanks at Pearl Harbor and at Hickam that can continue to provide fuel to our ships and our military aircraft, but there is, unless it's commercially located tanks above ground, maybe what's out at Campbell Industrial Park, working together with Par Hawaii, there are no other locations. And so that's something that the Navy has to factor as well. And then back to your previous statement, in the current order. So the order that the Department of Health Director issued yesterday is currently in effect. The Navy has requested a delay in their response, and that date and hearing is now set for December 14th. And it is my understanding that the Navy wishes to contest the order to drain the tanks. They have commenced transferring fuel and operating the Red Hill fuel farm. They acknowledge that publicly. Our congressional delegation and Governor Ige, we requested that of the Secretary of the Navy. But the order also includes, within 30 days, the draining of the Red Hill fuel farm. And the Navy, that cannot happen overnight. That is a major task to do, and the Navy is going to articulate why that is maybe not in the best interest of not just the Navy, but also the system itself and the aquifers. We'll see what they say, but that has been postponed now to December 14th.
Wow. And is it my understanding, Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, that in the contested case hearings, they tried to say it would take them till 2051 to build anything comparable to have to replace it anywhere? Is that correct?
They were looking at 2045.
2045.
In terms of replacing the tanks That being said, it doesn't take that long to start the process of getting the fuel away from our drinking water. These alternative storage sites doesn't have to be the sites they end up using if they do decide that they need facilities where they can access fuel. We just need this fuel, this threat to all of us to be removed as soon as safely possible.
Thank you. Our islands have long hosted military installations all over the place. Is there other infrastructure directly connected or adjacent to water consumption elsewhere that we should also be concerned about? Ernie?
According to the Navy, those sites were decommissioned or no longer used. And I think on some of those, they're doing cleanup. On Oahu, I'm at least only aware of the Red Hill facility being an active use facility that is directly over the drinking water aquifer.
Wayne, is that the Sierra Club's understanding too, or are there other installations that you're concerned about water?
I'm not aware at this moment of other installations that pose a similar threat. These tanks are one of a kind in a lot of ways. One of which is that I don't think there's anywhere else where we're storing, well over 100 million gallons of fuel right above 100 feet above the drinking water supply for half of a wall. That is what makes them very unique in my view.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Beamer, they may be unparalleled at Red Hill, but are there any other water adjacent military installations you're concerned with?
Right now, this is such a clear and present danger. I wouldn't even want to distract our audience's attention. Again, I want to speak to the hearts and the future of people in our islands. Like, none of us create water. We have a duty and a responsibility to protect our resources. And this could change life forever on Oahu. It takes people speaking up. I understand military industrial complex is a strong thing. We have an issue with that in Hawaii, with resistance and aloha aina, and there's a long history here. But this is an issue for everyone. And we must have the courage of our leadership. And I'm sorry to say we can't trust the Navy at this point. They haven't been transparent. They haven't been clear. We knew of this threat since 2014, and they don't even have a plan right now. So we got to stand together here for our water. Like Kai said, oloi kawai.
Thank
I
you.
agree completely with Kamana.
Thank you. Now, we also want to know what is known and not known about the health effects of this exposure, whether it's the health effects now or years into the future. I asked the Navy, what assurances do the victims have that they will be taken care of, not just today, but if there's some long-term effects for them or their children down the road? They did not give me specific answers about the long-term plan for continued care, only to tell me that, this is their quote, the Navy's priority is keeping active duty service members, civilians, their families, Department of Defense employees and their families, and all of those who use the Navy's water safe and healthy. They say they will continue to aggressively monitor and investigate. They've put up health related phone numbers and such on their address that they're dedicating to this, which is www.navy.mil/joint base water. And they say through that, the Emergency Family Action Center and such can continue to connect people with medical care. Again, that doesn't adequately answer what my question was for them is, what if you're sick today, tomorrow, next year, or in 10 years? Congressman Kahele, what assurances can people have that they won't be forgotten if they're debilitated by this?
Thanks, Gina. If you feel like you consumed water, there's any suspicion that you consumed water, at least starting from November 21st through the latter part of November and early December, you should definitely contact the Navy's EOC hotlines. You should go to the doctor, and you should get a checkup. And I also would encourage you to document and write down, let's say your dog was getting sick, or it was stopped drinking the water, or your child complained of stomach pains or started with a mysterious rash. between that time frame, please document that, because there needs to be, and there will be a forensic type of analysis on when in fact the water is suspected to have entered the Red Hill shaft, distributed via the system, and then consumed by the majority of which seems to be military service members and their families in the associated housing communities. This could potentially have long-term effects. I think it's important to document it, and we just don't know what we don't know, right? I'm not a doctor, and so I would encourage you to go see a doctor and document it. Obviously, if you're a military service member, there is service-connected disabilities. There's a DA. Gina, there are many examples of water contamination on military bases throughout the nation. Probably the most recent and the one that has gotten the most attention is what happened at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, where back in 2014, 2015, the Obama administration authorized $2 billion in a settlement to any military service member that served at Marine Corps Camp Lejeune for 30 days from a period of like the middle 1950s all the way until the 1980s. And so, looking at how that situation was addressed is potentially where this is going. So whether you're an active duty service member today, member of the Guard, the Reserve, your family members, or one day you're going to be a retired veteran, this potentially is long-term consequences and probably a very, very expensive consequences for what has happened here.
Sure. The expense not only to the families and the potential health, but also the expense of removing and moving these tanks and dealing with the infrastructure. We have a lot of great comments coming up in the chat, and I wish we could get to everyone's questions, but one of the continuous questions has been, what about these billions in federal money, whether it's from relief funds to infrastructure funds to things like Superfund? I think we have history on Oahu anyway of Superfund money back in the day being used to clean up areas, from sugar and pineapple so that those lands could be used again. Ernie, to your knowledge, can we tap into some big time billions from the feds to start to deal with this as the equivalent of a Superfund situation?
Yeah, I don't know if this qualifies for super funds right now, and for the federal funds, I kind of defer to the congressman for what's out there, but it seems like there are billions of dollars are being made available for infrastructure. If you think of the Red Hill facility for DOD, the Department of Defense, the Red Hill facility represents critical infrastructure to them, but so is their drinking water system. So I think the DOD's budget is the largest in the federal government. So it really depends. It's really up to the Navy or DOD to prioritize the replacement of the Red Hill facility high in their budget and to fund it and to move forward. But I think what we've seen through the years, and Congressman, I've been on this almost 8 years now, and what I've seen is the approach of just investing basically peanuts in that facility to clean, inspect, and patch it, to kind of band-aid it, to keep it running as long as possible. And my fear, I've told my staff from the very beginning here, my fear is that something terrible would happen before people wake up and this comes to their attention and something is done. Unfortunately, we're kind of at that point, but it could be much worse. So you need to invest. If the Navy critically needs this facility or fuel storage, they need to invest appropriately to ensure the long-term operation without compromising the safety of our drinking water and the environment. And I haven't seen that manifested thus far. I think the billions of dollars that are being made available in the federal budget, the Department of Defense needs to do something and prioritize either a complete replacement or complete overhaul of the Red Hill facility. But in the interim, Gina, I'm sorry, I'm kind of taking up a lot of time. I just wanted to get this in. We need the immediate removal of that fuel because of the threat and the risk it poses to the aquifer, just what Dr. Beamer pointed out. And the question is for all of us, what is going to be the legacy we leave for our children and the future generations that are going to depend on this resource? With climate change happening before our eyes and and for as long as we can think right now, will our available freshwater resources diminish? That to me points out the importance of preserving and protecting what we already have for as long as we can for our future generations. So, Kawaiola, water is life.
That's well said. Now, Gloria Borland in our chats has pointed out, and thank you, Gloria, the defense bill gets voted on next week. Congressman Kahele, can conditions be tied to it that to the extent that the Navy says money is the issue, can the defense bill be used as a leverage on this one, on getting this done fast, removing that fuel immediately?
So, Gina, thanks for the question. It cannot be done in the current National Defense Authorization Act because that is being passed right now, a matter of fact, as we speak. And so that is done, and that is the authorizing bill that authorizes the military for new programs and new projects. And so it can't be included in that. It is possible that it could be included on the appropriation side of the House because that has not been completed yet. And right now, there's a date to have that done by the 18th of February of 2022. And so we'll have to see, what happens with that. But, Ernie is right. Up until now, the Pentagon and the Navy have not, prioritized a major funding request for this project, and we know that because when the budget comes to Congress, when it comes out of the Navy, when it goes to the Pentagon and the Secretary of Defense, when it goes to the Office of Management and Budget, and finally, of course, to the White House, and when it comes to Congress, it's not in there. And so what ends up happening is appropriators like Congressman Case, Senator Schatz on the Appropriations Committee have to put in money to or look at putting in money on the back end to do that. And a project of this magnitude, which will cost billions of dollars, make no mistake, to whether you do secondary containment within the tanks or you do another fuel above ground fuel farm somewhere on this island, is going to cost billions of dollars and will take a lot of time. And the Navy up until this point has not asked for that large sum of money because they have other priorities. If you look at the Navy's budget right now, it's I think about $175 billion. When you take out what goes to the United States Marine Corps, and although that sounds like a lot of money, that is to run the entire Navy program and all the new START programs that is going to cost. Tomorrow we're blessing the USS Danny Noy, the Navy's new Arleigh Burke destroyer at Pearl Harbor, which costs somewhere about $1.5 to $2 billion. So just think about how much it would cost to address this fuel issue and compare it to other assets that the Navy up until now has prioritized. I think what has happened over the last 2 weeks has totally changed the dynamic and changed the game, and the Navy is going to be forced to address this.
Well, sure. And as they always say, follow the money, and the money has not has signaled their intention yet. Hopefully they can invest the equivalent of the cost of a destroyer into saving our water. How do we restore a fully functioning and transparent regulatory structure to ensure that this never happens again? I mean, even already in this, I had a story last week that there's been contamination since earlier this year. KHON2 revealed. There was a big one last year, more even this summer. It's not the first time, and the Department of Health had known this at some point. The regulatory structure doesn't seem to be able to act quickly enough or catch or realize the significance of it or something. So, Mr. Beamer, what's your expertise in terms of if you could wave the magic wand, how would you remake the regulations such that there is an immediate, cause and effect to catching and fixing these problems much sooner than somebody having to take a drink of it from their tap?
Yeah, this has been a failure of our bureaucracy. And I say that as someone that volunteered 8 years of my life advocating for our water. And we knew of this threat, and we asked the Navy countless times. We asked for help with from our federal leaders to address this issue. And if I'm being really frank, unfortunately, the power of the military caused some people not to take action. And what we can never have happen again is to forget that. If this was another entity poisoning our aquifer, we would consider it terrorism. And anyone poisoning our aquifer is a threat to the future lives of our islands. And we need to act accordingly, and we need to have the courage to speak out. And that's where I've been so impressed by Ernie and his stance that he's taken over these years in a very difficult position. And there have been many others. But let's be frank, folks. We could have done more, and we need to step up immediately now. We can't. When I told my son about this issue, and I said, look, the military budget roughly is $78 billion. He said, oh my God, they got more money than Elon Musk. So we can fix this. We can't let bureaucracy and business as usual stop us from addressing this critical threat.
Sure. Congressman Kahele, can you weigh in on that a little bit too? I mean, now we've had everything from, the Department of Health having their hearings. We have the Board of Water Supply taking up the issue, Sierra Club taking up the issue, and now even the city and county of Honolulu introducing bills to try to get in the mix for approvals. Is there a whole regulatory overhaul that could be done to nail this once and for all?
Absolutely. I think everything is on the table. This is for most people. The learning about the Red Hill fuel tanks and in this detail, where it's been in the news every single day, is in some cases new for a lot of people. But for these panelists and for others, it's not. The issues we've had at Red Hill. Started as soon as the entire fuel farm was declassified in 1995. Just think about that, right? The project started in 1940, before Pearl Harbor was even attacked. It was finished in 1943 under the absolute secrecy and highly classified, where people that worked there could never talk about it. It was classified until 1995. So we don't know if there were leaks prior to that point. As it became unclassified, there was more that people learned about it. I don't know when Ernie first heard about Red Hill. I'm sure he can share it with us, but we've been talking about this for 20 years now. In 2008, Navy groundwater plan was accepted by the Navy. In 2014, we had the first leak. There's an administrative order of consent in 2015. Kamana talked about it when he worked on it with Seaworm. The state legislature passed a task force in 2014 because of the 2014 leak, and they filed a task force report in 2015. So my point is that this is not new. We have been dealing with this for a long, long time. I think Kamana's right. In some cases, leaders that came before us because of the military's role in Hawaii. I don't know. I can't say they looked the other way, but they tried to find that balance and had to make tough decisions, and tough decisions weren't made. We need to fix that now, and this is our moment. We need to work together. I think, like Ernie said, to fix it and to address the issue. With the most important thing being number one, that's the people of Hawaii and our water, our precious public trust resource. It needs to be protected at the highest level, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you. I'd like to go around to all of our panelists with a closing statement. Again, as I've mentioned before, the Navy declined to join us in person, declined multiple invitations. We sent them written follow-ups as well. They provided some written answers. I will tell you a couple of their closing statements that they sent me in writing. I asked them, how are you going to rebuild the trust with residents, military and civilian? They didn't give many specifics, but said generally, we understand your frustration and anger and desire for guidance and answers. We're committed to sharing all the information from test results, from water samples as they come in. We are committed to finding the root cause of how the Red Hill well was contaminated, and we will clean it up and ensure there is a safe, reliable source of drinking water. That's the Navy's closing statement for us. If I can go to our panelists too, your thoughts in closing, whether it's on the trust issue or anything else you want to be sure sticks in the minds of our viewers this afternoon. Mr. Tanaka, we'll start with you.
I just want to say thank you so much for all of our panelists here, for all of your hard work, your courage, your dedication to protecting our water resource. I just like to close by saying, these tanks have been leaking. These tanks are 80 years old. They've been leaking this entire time since, the first earthquake in 1948 that spilled 46,000 gallons of fuel when they were brand new. Since that time, they've leaked almost 200,000 gallons. There's a risk that they may leak orders of magnitude more in the coming years. The only logical, sane solution is to get this fuel away from our drinking water. And it's something that people have been working on for a long, not just years, but generations. We're going to have to be the generation that gets this cancer off of our water supply. If folks want to engage, you can come to our website, Sierra Club updates, learn about more things that we can do to deal with this insane situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Wayne, I saw your website go up in the chat before. Go ahead and throw that up there one more time as well so people can stay on that Sierra Club website. Mr. Beamer, can you share your closing thoughts?
Sure. Again, this is the most critical threat that our island's freshwater system has ever faced in the history of life in Hawaii. From the time our ancestors navigated on Va'a here, we've had fresh, clean Kamanamaikalani Beamer. And the significance of this issue is it impacts all of us. And again, I'm not being disparaging. We cannot trust the Navy at this point after this history. We have to band together. And I would like to ask everyone in their power, anyone running for office, anyone in office, to do everything in their power right now to move the fuel and to decommission the tanks. It needs to happen immediately. This is a threat to our lives. It's a threat to our economic future. I've been getting calls from people in the Hawaii Tourism Authority. There's a lot that's connected to having clean and fresh water in our islands, and we need to act and move accordingly, even if it's difficult, even if it is very uncomfortable. Mahalo.
Thank you. Congressman Kahele, your closing thoughts.
Gina, for moderating this, and again for the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement for hosting this. It's been great to bring these subject matter experts together. Gina, this has consumed just about every hour of my life for the last 2 weeks, ever since I was first notified on Saturday, November 20th, that there was a situation in Red Hill. And it's got my full attention ever since the Department of Health on that Monday night put out the order. And I just happened to be here in Honolulu, and I drove straight to Halsey Terrace and started going house to house at 9 o'clock at night, asking to smell people's water and asking if they were okay. So, it has the attention of the entire delegation. We continue to work on this issue. Part of my role and Congress's role is oversight over the federal government, and in this particular case, the United States military, as a member of the House Armed Services Committee and the subcommittees that directly are involved with Pearl Harbor, Hickam, and the Navy, and our military readiness. This is something that is very, very important. I support what the governor is doing. I think every option is on the table right now, including the complete drainage and shutdown of Red Hill. And we got to find a solution moving forward. And this is something that is not going to be over in the next few days. It's going to be a long process over the next few months, and that's what I've asked the Navy to do. I have raised the concerns directly to the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, Chief of Naval Operations. Just spent 3 hours earlier this morning after the December 7th ceremonies with the Navy and their entire team. And I'm here in Hawaii right now working on that, and I'll be with Major General Ryan and General Flynn of USAPAC tomorrow. And so this has our highest attention. I pledge to everyone on this panel and the people of Hawaii that we will protect our water. And I'm committed to doing that. And just one final note, Gina, I just want to, for everyone watching this, if you are affected by the water or you were affected, I posted in the chat, but just so that we have it on the stream, if you're an Army service member or affected family, please call their 24/7 emergency family assistance line at 1-877-406-2148. If you're a resident in the Aliamano housing area, please call their crisis hotline at 808-656-3279. And if you need to call the Navy Emergency Operations Center, please call them at 808-448-2574. Again, thank you so much, Gina. Mahalo to everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you for reading off those phone numbers. Also, there's other services. Air Force has listed some numbers. There's emergency assistance, family assistance, medical. If you go to www.navy.mil/joint base water, there is a whole string of numbers as well. We'll get that up there in the chat in a little bit before we sign off as well. Thank you so much, Congressman, for everything you're doing and for all of those resources and phone numbers. And our final closing statement, the man who's been at the tip of the spear on a lot of this for years and years, Mr. Lau. Oh, Ernie, go to unmute for your closing statement. There you go.
Yes, it's me and technology. It doesn't get along. It's like oil and water in a way. You shouldn't have oil and water. But thank you, Gina. You've done a great job today. And I want to thank the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement for this opportunity. The Board of Water Supply, since 2014, we felt like we were the lone voice out there trying to ring the alarm bell to warn people that a disaster is coming. Unfortunately, we're kind of in that disaster that's impacting the Navy themselves and their service personnel and their dependents and their businesses and contractors. We're in the reactionary mode right now. We're reacting to that. We need to somehow move beyond reacting to being proactive to prevent any further contamination of this precious aquifer there that both the Navy and the Board of Water Supply, this public trust resource, we all depend upon it. We need to preserve that resource for future generations. But the process is going to require transparency of all parties. We're going to need to have access to the information in a timely way. We want to ensure that the information is accurate and of good quality, that it hasn't been gained to possibly reduce the findings, to distort the findings, but it needs to be done correctly, and it needs to be provided to the community in a timely way. And bottom line, the question for all of us is, what is the legacy we are going to leave here? That what will history record is, what did Ernie Lau do during this time to preserve this resource for all future generations to come? Because there is always going to be people that depend upon this resource. So I just beg everybody, please, let's work together. Let's all kukua to solve the problem and get the Navy to move off of their position. They need to move. I thought that what happened at the base recently in the last week and a half was a real wake-up call for them. But what you've read, Gina, their statements, their written statements, I've heard this kind of propaganda for the last 8 years, and I am sick of it. It needs to change. So please, everybody, work together. Let's move from being reactive to proactive. Let's preserve this resource for future generations. Mahalo. There is no substitute for pure water, folks. Thank you.
Mahalo, Ernie. Well said. Well, folks, I see Kuhio Lewis has joined us on the screen. He's going to be taking over for me. I'm going to go anchor the 4 o'clock news, where we're going to include updates about the very latest from the Navy today, including the breaking news that we heard on this panel today from Mr. Lau and Congressman Kahele, that the Navy has isolated another of their wells. Now this is 2 out of the 3 wells serving their housing community. They are now have locked down the Aiea Halava well in addition to the Red Hill Shaft well. A significant move today. We'll also leave the Q&A chat box. So if you folks have your great questions going, please keep them going. Kuhio's going to take over as moderating. My colleague here at KHON is going to keep the live stream going on KHON as well. And then you can rewatch this in its entirety, both at khon2.com /Red Hill Crisis Panel. We'll put that up in the chat here as well. And Kuhio will confirm if it can be rewatched here additionally. It's my honor to be with all of you knowledgeable gentlemen. Thank you. And aloha to all of you.
Mahalo.
Thanks, Gina, and for jumping on this so quickly. And I know you're going to hold them accountable for us. So mahalo from us to you for being a part of this discussion. We do have a few more minutes, and I wanted to maximize the opportunity that we have with these panelists here to answer some of the questions that I saw in chat. I see a lot of questions about what can community do or what can we do to respond, and I know Ernie kind of touched on that. But is there something community can do at this point? Like, how do we hold the Navy accountable? Does someone want to tackle that question?
Can you repeat that, Kuhio?
Go for it, Ernie.
You know what? Like I said earlier, we were for the longest time the lone voice, and I appreciate the work of the Sierra Club joining us on that effort. It's really it has to be voices from the community that get heard. So I appreciate everybody. For number one, the community needs to be educated so they fully understand the situation. And this Red Hill situation, the aquifer, it's very complicated and in some parts very technical. So people have been investing to become more knowledgeable. And it's gotten to the place that Ernie and I don't even need to explain it anymore. People are explaining it to us, and that is a positive sign. Now it's carrying that voice forward and making it heard in the appropriate to the decision makers that do have direct responsibility. So my recommendation, Kuhio, community, just continue to be engaged on this, stay educated, stay informed, and express your voice.
Kamana, Wayne, Congressman?
Sure. Maybe I'll jump on that. I think absolutely everything Ernie said. I think additionally, showing your local and state, your representatives, how important this issue is for you is really important. Giving them, the confidence to stand up and the courage to do things differently here with the Navy is really, really critical and important. And I think this is a critical issue for the upcoming election, is where people stand on addressing this serious threat to Oahu's aquifer. And I think we should ask candidates running for office these kinds of questions to make sure that they're looking out for our best interests.
I'll just add to that. Not everyone realizes that local Navy leaders are only here for 3 or 5 years and then they're gone. And that's why it's like Groundhog Day, where someone will come in, we'll try to work with them. Next thing you know, they're gone. The new person comes in, and we start from ground zero, from square one. We need to go above local Navy command. We are targeting the Pentagon, the top brass, that includes Secretary Carlos Del Toro, includes Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, includes the president. But the only way we're going to reach them is if we all come together and speak together. And that's why what Kamana said is so important, to make sure all of our leaders understand, they take a role, all of our community groups understand, they can reach out, reach out to Hawaii chapter of Sierra Club. I'll be happy to meet with your groups, your churches, neighborhood associations. We'll demystify the situation and ensure that people understand how serious and how important it is that we all engage, we all speak with one voice. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Congressman?
Yeah, Kuhio, I would echo probably what Wayne just said is, the community through your voice needs to continue and even more elevate your concerns through, your congressional delegation, I think is obviously important. The governor's office, and then the federal government and the administration of President Biden. Right now, if you look at the emergency order that has been put out yesterday by the Department of Health, this will most certainly go into the legal arena now. And, we're going to have to see what happens on December 14th when the Navy has their opportunity to answer the executive order or the emergency order that has been put out by DOH, and what they are going to propose to do. And so we'll have to see. But I think between now and then, using the Sierra Club and the Hawaii chapter and other vocal, organizations to help, elevate your voice and your level of concern, I think is really important at this time.
So, Congressman Kahele, earlier this week we sent a letter to President Biden, and we did get some preliminary response from them, and I think part of that was them sending the Navy Secretary here. But anything that you hope for or see in the future that could come from the Biden administration? I understand that some of you have had direct contact to the White House.
I know Senator Schatz has spoken directly to the White House and the Chief of Staff, Ron Klain. I did see the letter, Kuhio, that you sent to the president. Of course, you have I guess you could say a small relationship with President Biden because you attended a meeting at the White House's request a few months ago. And so I thought CNHA sending a letter to the president was a very, very good and bold move. And again, we continue to put that pressure on. You're right. The Secretary of the Navy, Del Toro, is here, and always also as the Chief of Naval Operations. Basically, the two highest leaders for the United States Navy in the entire U.S. military, both civilian and military, are here on island right now, and their full attention is dedicated to this. I can 100% assure you, having met with them for over an hour on Saturday and having sat with the CNO this morning for about 3 hours, I know that they are totally focused on this and will be here at least through tomorrow and the commissioning of the USS Danny Noi.
Thank you. Ernie, I have a question. So we are hearing that, there's potential impacts to other communities or even like Barbers Point who might get their supply of water from the Navy. Do we know what extent beyond just that how widespread the impacts could be to other communities?
That's a good question. And Kuhio, we don't really know a whole lot about the Navy's water system, which is completely separate from the BWS system. But apparently, it still serves different parts of the communities, like the Iroquois Point areas, appears to be off the Navy system. Whether the water there comes only from Waiawa Shaft, which is the Navy source in Pearl City that's pretty far away from the fuel tanks, or could some, depending on the time of day, some of the water come from Red Hill Shaft. It really depends on, which sources are pumping throughout a 24-hour period and how water is being used within the Navy water system. So I wish I could, basically the bottom line is I don't know, Kuhio. And Kuhio, mahalo for all your efforts and for the council for doing what they did, sending the letter to the president. We really appreciate that.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, you've been holding down the fort. Congressman Kahele, I'm just wondering, is there a chance, do you believe there's a chance that we can, the Navy Secretary may be able to meet with the Board of Water Supply while he's in town? I don't know who he's meeting with, but is that a possibility?
Let me go back to previous, what you and Ernie were talking about. So the Navy's water system is pretty extensive, and it's about 250 miles long in terms of piping. That system is fed by 3 primary sources: the Waiava Shaft, the Halava Shaft, the Red Hill Shaft. There are several tanks that store that water. Red Hill has storage tanks, Halava has storage tanks, and Camp Smith has storage tanks. And the system gravity flows through a pretty wide area. But Iroquois Point on the Eva Beach side is supplied by the Navy's water system. Of course, all of Hickam Air Force Base, all of Pearl Harbor, the associated housing areas around the Navy Marine Golf Course, the Navy Exchange, Makalapa, the Pearl City Peninsula. This would be below the Home Depot and where the Best Buy is on the peninsula. All of Ford Island is served by the system. And then specifically on the Army side, the Aliamanu housing area, Camp Smith, the McGrew Point housing area over by Pearl Ridge. So it's an extensive system. And when it's at full operational capacity, it provides anywhere between 12 to 22 million gallons of fresh, clean drinking water daily throughout that system. And it serves about 60,000, military and civilian personnel. And so that's the Navy's water system. And as far as the Secretary of the Navy meeting with Ernie, I'm not sure if that has happened, but I do know that the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, met with Ernie following a 1-hour meeting that I had with both of them Saturday night on the West Coast. And within minutes of that meeting's conclusion, the Secretary or the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, personally called Ernie, and it's my understanding that they met either in person or on the phone on Sunday. Whether the Secretary of the Navy, Del Toro, has met with Ernie and the Board of Water Supply, I can't confirm that, but I do know that the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, has met with Ernie and at the delegation's request. And so that's a positive step in the right direction, and to rebuild some type of trust and communication amongst the different federal and state and county agencies that have a critical role in our Oahu's aquifers and water distribution system.
Kuhio, I just want to confirm, yes, because
Mahalo, Congressman.
what
Ernie,
Congress,
I live in Kapolei, so I'm just wondering this question because Kalailoa has been developed. It's starting to get developed. There's homes that are not military there. So
Right.
like Iroquois Point. And I believe they're still on the old water system. So is there potential impact to those families, and are they being made aware of any impacts to them?
Kuhio, I believe Kalailoa, which is now part of
Question for me, Kuhio?
Kuhio, is that question for me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that was for you. Do you know if the
Kalailoa, where they're starting to build homes down there, to our knowledge, that used to be the old Barbers Point Naval Air Station, which under the BRAC, the base realignment and closure, was closed down and transferred to the state of Hawaii. So the water system that used to serve Kalailoa, which has a water source, I think it's called Barbers Point Shaft, which used to be Navy, is now operated by a private entity. And that's kind of Kalailoa is now its own private water system, I believe separate from the Navy's water system. Except for maybe portions. I don't think Iroquois Point is within the Kalailoa. The one question I have is I'm not sure if the Barbers Point Golf Course, which is still, I think, Navy, if that's coming off the Kalailoa system or the Navy's water system.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? We have just 3 minutes left. Any one of our panelists? First of all, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. This was very timely. Our convention was positioned where we could bring this to our greater community. But with the last couple of minutes, is there any closing thoughts that any of you wanted to share?
I think I've said enough, but remember.
Go ahead.
Come on.
Again, thank you everyone for your courageous leadership. And this is a tough issue for Hawaii. You know, it brings up historical injustice of the overthrow. It brings up occupation, all these issues kind of colliding around our water resources. And going to take plenty of uncomfortable conversations, going to take some courageous collaborations, but we can all agree that Ole Kauai, water is sacred. Water is the key to the future of life on our islands. And I think we have to take it with that kind of courage and that kind of openness. But unfortunately, we also have to recognize the Navy has not been transparent. And so we got to work together and take the precautionary principle to do what's best for our aquifer, for the lives of the future of Hawaii.
Well, mahalo nui to our panelists again for your advocacy. This is certainly an issue that's going to be top of mind for many of us. Looking into the future, I'm sure there's going to be more kahea going out to our community in ways in which we could apply pressure and keep the pressure on. But thank you so much for spending some time with us today, shining light and educating our community. And to everyone watching, thanks so much for tuning in and getting educated. So with that, we're going to sign off. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha i ka wai. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Congressman Kahele. Aloha.